Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're dissecting a story that honestly feels like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood thriller. We're talking about how a 19-year-old Stanford dropout pulled off the biggest scam of the 21st century, relying on, well, just pure blind faith. It's a wildly fascinating look at what happens when a compelling narrative completely overshadows actual reality.
So it really begs the question, how easy is it to fool the smartest people on Earth? We're starting here because our main character, Elizabeth Holmes, somehow managed to deceive cabinet secretaries, huge media moguls, and some of the most cynical, seasoned investors on the planet. And the craziest part? She pulled the whole thing off without a real working product. Literally no product. Let's get into how exactly she did it.
Section 1. The Impossible Promise, a revolution in a single drop. Okay, picture this. It's 2003. Holmes, claiming she has a terrible fear of needles, pitches a supposedly revolutionary device called the Edison. The pitch was just absolute magic. One single drop of blood, hundreds of different tests, and 0 needles. This tiny little box was supposedly going to run everything from your basic blood sugar checks all the way up to complex cancer markers, all from a quick finger prick. No big scary syringes, no giant vials of blood, and no waiting around for days. It sounded like science fiction. In fact, it sounded so incredible that people basically decided they just desperately wanted it to be true.
Section 2. Cultivating the Illusion, the Silicon Valley Playbook.
You see, she wasn't really selling a medical device. She was selling a visionary persona. She totally hijacked the Silicon Valley playbook. I mean, she famously wore black turtlenecks every single day to look exactly like Steve Jobs. She spoke in this unnaturally deep, hypnotic voice to sound more authoritative. She was even known for barely blinking during interviews, which gave her this intense, mesmerizing aura. But her absolute masterstroke? The board of directors. She didn't pack it with doctors or scientists. No, she brought in former US secretaries of state, top-tier military generals, and literal billionaires. It basically created a force field of legitimacy. Because, honestly, if these wildly accomplished power players believe in her, who are we to question it?
And wow, did that illusion pay off? $9 billion. By 2014, that massive valuation made Elizabeth Holmes the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. The hype had literally spun into billions. But it was an entire empire built on quicksand.
Section 3. The Dangerous Reality, Hiding Behind the Hype.
Right, so behind all those closed doors, a massive, terrifying deception was unfolding. The promise was that one drop of blood gave you perfect, immediate results. The reality? A total catastrophe. It turns out, a single drop of blood from a fingertip is an incredibly unstable sample. It gets mixed up with tissue and interstitial fluids the second you prick the skin. Because of that basic biological fact, the Edison machine was just spitting out random, wildly inaccurate numbers. The tech just straight up didn't work. Now, most companies at this point would say, okay, pause, we need to fix this. Not Theranos. Instead, they pushed forward, launching wellness centers in major Walgreens stores and ran a hugely cynical cover-up. Here is what was actually happening. Step 1, the tech takes that tiny finger prick from a patient. Step 2, they walk that sample into a hidden back room. Step 3, they dilute that tiny drop of blood to artificially bump up the volume. And step 4, they quietly run it through standard, bulky commercial machines made by companies like Siemens. So the Edison wasn't doing the work at all. They were entirely faking it, using the very lab equipment they claimed to be replacing.
Just think about the real-world impact for a second. Because they were watering down these tiny samples to force them into machines meant for large vials of blood, the data was totally useless. Real, everyday patients were getting dangerously wrong medical results. People were falsely diagnosed with cancer or prostate issues, going through unimaginable emotional hell. And honestly, even worse, patients with severe, life-threatening conditions were being told they were perfectly healthy, completely delaying the vital treatments they needed. They weren't faking a social media app here. They were literally gambling with human lives.
Section 4. The House of Cards collapses. The truth comes out.
Obviously, a secret of this magnitude just cannot stay buried. The armor finally started to crack in 2015 when Wall Street Journal investigative reporter John Carreyrou started digging into the science, or lack thereof, and what he uncovered were incredibly brave former employees, the actual scientists and lab techs who just couldn't stomach staying silent anymore about the massive medical fraud happening right in front of them.
But, as you might expect, Elizabeth Holmes fought back, and she fought dirty. The retaliation was absolutely fierce. She weaponized her billionaire investors to try and strong-arm the newspaper's management into killing the story completely. At the same time, her high-powered legal team went after those whistleblowers relentlessly. We're talking threats of federal prison and total financial ruin if they breathed a word to the press. It was a vicious campaign of pure intimidation. But, you know, the truth usually finds a way out, and the explosive story broke anyway. The fallout was instant, and it was brutal. $0. The minute that Wall Street Journal piece dropped, everything unraveled. Regulators swooped in with surprise inspections, found absolutely appalling violations, and shut the labs down immediately. Heavyweight corporate partners like Walgreens scrambled to tear up their contracts. And just like that, in a matter of months, that glittering $9 billion valuation completely vaporized into thin air. Nothing.
Looking at this whole timeline really just puts the madness into perspective. It kicked off in 2003 with that impossible pie-in-the-sky pitch. It skyrocketed to its peak 11 years later in 2014 when she was hailed as the youngest female billionaire. The crash hit in 2015 when the Wall Street Journal exposed the massive lie, and it finally wraps up in 2022 when the justice system inevitably caught up with her.
The end result? 11 years. A jury found her guilty of massive corporate fraud, handing down an 11-year sentence in federal prison. It was a heavy, stunning conclusion that slammed the door shut on the entire Theranos saga once and for all.
Section 5. A deadly motto. The fatal flaw in healthcare. Ultimately, this explainer isn't just about some wild true crime scandal. It is a massive reality check. Fake it till you make it. We hear it constantly, right? It's basically the golden rule of tech startups. And hey, if you're building a new photo app or tweaking some software, faking it until you finally iron out the bugs is completely fine. The worst that happens is your app crashes and you reboot your phone. But Theranos showed us exactly what happens when you take that same reckless Silicon Valley mindset and smash it into human medicine. When it comes to blood tests and actual medical diagnoses, faking it is deadly. The desperate chase for this huge industry-disrupting vision made brilliant people totally blind to the fact that there was literally zero real science holding the entire thing together.
So I want to leave you with this to chew on. What is your biggest takeaway from all of this? When you peel back the black turtleneck, the weird deep voice, the billions of dollars, and the totally fake tests, how do we make absolutely sure that the hype of a world-changing vision never again blinds us to a very dangerous reality? It's something every investor, every patient, and honestly, every entrepreneur really needs to be asking themselves. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this breakdown gave you a fresh perspective, and I'll catch you in the next one where we'll keep unpacking more of the world's most fascinating concepts.